Chips have a wide range of applications, and a mid to high-end smartphone needs at least hundreds of chips. In addition, the common routers, TVs, refrigerators, etc. in the home also need a lot of chips. These chips involve mature manufacturing processes and can be produced domestically. Amid declining demand for consumer electronics, Chinese companies have cut orders for 43 billion chips, while exporting 160 billion chips. Why is there such import and export data? Chinese companies reduce chip imports. Are US companies anxious? The transformation of chip supply and demand. China is a big consumer of chips, and its population of 1.4 billion consumes hundreds of billions of chips every year. As small as a remote control, as large as a car, as long as it is an electronic device, it needs to use a chip. The more chips are consumed, the larger the market and the more capital intensive. Taking smartphones as an example, there are hundreds of chips involved, and most of them are based on high-end processes. Behind this is an industrial chain, with an output value of hundreds of billions of dollars. The top EUV lithography machines, etching machines and photoresist materials are almost all serving high-end mobile phone chips. After all, so far, except for consumer electronic products, such as smartphones, 7 nanometers, 5 nanometers, and below chip processes are rarely used. American companies dominate the high-end chip market. Qualcomm's Snapdragon chips are selling well in China, and Apple's self-developed A-series processors have also risen with the popularity of the iPhone. These consumer electronics chip suppliers can make a lot of money in China every year, handing over dazzling financial report data to shareholders and investors. However, the situation has changed. The consumer demand for smartphones has declined, and the inventory of major mobile phone manufacturers has increased. Because manufacturers have stockpiled a lot of chips in the context of chip shortages, when demand declines, these chips become inventory products. There is no need to buy new ones if the old stock cannot be sold. Therefore, from January to July this year, Chinese companies reduced orders by 43 billion chips, a year-on-year decrease of 11.8%. The reduction in orders shows that there is no longer a strong demand for certain types of chips. In connection with the decline in smartphone shipments, it can be guessed that the types of chips that have been reduced in imports include mobile terminal SoC, radio frequency chips, Bluetooth chips, screen driver IC chips, and so on. The market share of these chips has always been in the hands of US companies. Not surprisingly, reducing orders will bring greater variables to the revenue growth of US companies. In addition to reducing chip imports, China is increasing the export quota for chips. Data show that from January to July this year, mainland China exported 160 billion chips, while domestic production reached 190 billion. From these data, it is not difficult to see that the relationship between supply and demand of chips has been transformed, from imported chips to self-production and sales to meet domestic demand, and even from import to export. And some chips with large demand, independent controllability, and sufficient production capacity are exported. Export, and achieve a corresponding increase in export value. The high-end chip export market may be in the hands of American companies, but when it comes to automotive chips, IoT chips, AI chips and other products, it is not only the United States that can manufacture. China has a rich and huge chip industry chain, and there are participants in all upstream and downstream links. Within the scope of production and supply, exporting will help enhance the economic growth of all markets. Are US companies anxious to reduce chip imports? For a long time, China has played the role of consumer in the global chip industry chain. Countries and regions sell chips to the Chinese market and then earn huge revenue profits. Especially in the United States, American chip companies entering the Chinese market have basically achieved positive year-on-year revenue growth. If it were not for the destruction of chip globalization by American rules, perhaps American companies would have benefited more. From the perspective of consumers, they can also get the products they want, and the two parties belong to a mutually beneficial relationship. But the US wants to keep the consumer's business in check, so it uses unconventional competition to limit suppliers' shipments. When it reaches a certain level, American companies will be allowed to obtain shipping licenses, and suppliers in other countries and regions will miss out on this part of the order. To the surprise of the United States, consumers no longer have urgent consumer demand. Chips related to smartphones are facing a significant reduction in orders. The high-end chips produced by American companies are afraid that they will not be able to sell. In the face of Chinese companies reducing chip imports, are US companies anxious? The answer is yes. Micron Technology is already clearing its inventory. Nvidia is also selling graphics cards at below market prices, and Qualcomm is transforming the server chip market to reduce its reliance on mobile phone chips. These phenomena all show that the United States does not grasp the cooperative relationship with the consumer market, and sooner or later will experience the consequences of its own self-inflicted consequences. Some foreign media also said that it is no wonder that ASML has changed. ASML's attitude towards the Chinese market was arrogant at the beginning, and it believed that providing drawings would not be able to create a top-level lithography machine. But now ASML is showing all kinds of favors to China. In order to win the Chinese market, it would rather stand on the opposite side of the rules and issue a warning, and even set a China Day for Chinese employees. On September 1st every year, Chinese employees can enjoy additional holidays. It can be seen that ASML is increasing its layout in the Chinese market in response to the needs of the Chinese market. Because ASML understands that China will reduce its reliance on chips from US companies and turn to self-produced and self-sold chips. If ASML can seize the opportunity, it is not difficult to win a large number of lithography machine orders. With such a market prospect, it is no wonder that ASML's attitude has changed. Chinese companies are switching chip supply and demand, from importing to self-producing and selling, and even turning additional chips to export. Chips from Chinese companies are all exported, and chips from American companies are not easy to sell. Perhaps it is time for the United States to reflect on what it has done to American companies. Do you think American companies can still sell chips? Feel free to share in the comments below.